And now, a friend to the Steve Malzberg show who has put it all in writing, as they say, with his brand new book, Taking the Stand, My Life in the Law. I hold it here in my hands, and we welcome in the one and only Harvard Law professor, Alan Dershowitz. Hey, Alan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Have you ever seen a book before that had blurbs on the back cover that called the author deranged, a war criminal, nasty, stupid, and having it start with President Jimmy Carter, I don't read Dershowitz. I'm so proud of my enemies list that I decided to put them on the back cover.
That is very unique, and kudos for that. I worked at WABC Radio for 24 years, and I thought that was some kind of record in this business. You are leaving your chair at Harvard after this semester, I believe, and you got there when you were 25, and you're leaving now, God bless you, at 75. So, wow.
50 years, 10,000 students, including some pretty prominent ones. I guess the most prominent one in the news recently has been Ted Cruz, but I also take credit for many, many, many other students. So, it's been a good ride, 50 years. This is my 30th book, my 75 years. So, in this book, what I try to do is make it very readable. I have vignettes, funny stories about my clients, about my famous cases, good John reading, one-page vignettes, and then serious discussions of how the First Amendment has changed over the last 50 years and what role I played in changing it, how the trial of murder cases, I've had 36 homicide cases, won more than 30 of them using science, how I win my cases, and, discussions of controversial things like abortion, affirmative action, gay rights, all the issues you would expect me to address, but you'll be very surprised at my answers. I'm against Roe versus Wade, for example. That's going to surprise a lot of people.
No, that absolutely, one of the things that struck me, all the names, the litany of names that people you've represented in various cases or some legal aspects, some non-legal. But what was your relationship with Bill Belichick? I found that name just shot out at me.
You can't disclose a lot of things in terms of lawyer-client, but I can only tell you that when he was being moved from the Jets to the Patriots, I played a small role in that movement and that case, and helped a little bit to bring Belichick to the Boston Patriots, where I got my money's worth last Sunday with 5 seconds to go. Brady did it again, a pass into the end zone. And it was terrific. Sunday was one of the great days in Boston sports. I was at the Red Sox game when Poppy hit the grand slam home run in the 8th inning, and then Saltamacchia brought in the winning run in the 9th. So I'm a pretty happy Boston fan.
Good for you. And I had Bobby Valentine on Monday, and he said that he, of course, that might be a name you don't like to talk about too much as a Red Sox fan, but after last year, but he said he just knew that Big Poppy was going to hit the grand slam.
Well, he gets a bad rap. I think he was the manager during clearly a transition and a difficult year. And, you do give the credit and the blame where it belongs to a combination of management, the manager, the team, the fans, and it all came together this year. It did not come together last year. And I think the fans, really take it out. And Valentine's an easy guy to take it out on, but I don't think it's a fair rap.
And what do you think is going to happen the rest of the way? It's now down to a 2 out of 3.
It's very, very difficult because, Detroit has better pitching generally, and, Detroit is a terrific team. We've won our games. Look, Big Poppy got 1 hit. He's 1 for 15.
Yeah.
14 other times he got up, he made out, but the one time he got up and he got the hit was when it was needed. So we've been opportunistic and a little bit lucky. So if I had to bet widows and orphans money, I don't think I would bet it on the Red Sox this year, though my hopes are obviously with the Red Sox.
We're talking to Alan Dershowitz, his new bestseller, Taking the Stand, My Life in the Law. Let's stick with the sports theme for a second, and let's go to OJ. I won't say you're best known for that because look at all you've done. But, when you talk about Alan Dershowitz, people still say to me, oh, yeah, wasn't he on the OJ team? So you talked to him after the glove, didn't fit.
I did.
What was that like? Tell me.
Because I had my doubts. I was in the courtroom, and I wondered why the glove didn't fit. Was it because he was wearing latex underneath it? I asked him to try them on without the latex, and it didn't fit. That was not why we won the case, the glove. We won the case because of the sock. There was a sock, the best piece of evidence imaginable. It had OJ's blood and had the blood of both victims. The problem is the blood was poured on the sock by Officer Van Adder, and we proved it in 3 different ways. Number one, the blood on the sock had EDTA, which is a chemical not found in the human body, found only in test tubes, that is used to make sure it doesn't coagulate. Number two, the mirror image on the 4 sides of the sock prove that the blood had been poured on it when it was lying flat, not being worn by a human being. Dexter could have proved that easily if he had been around. And third, the claim that the socks were found on the white floor in front of OJ's bed was disproved by the contemporaneous videotape, which showed that the socks were in the hamper and not on the floor. That was a piece of evidence planted by cops who wanted to frame a guilty man. That is, they knew for sure in their mind that OJ was guilty, but they thought he'd get away with it, so they manufactured a piece of evidence, and we caught him. We didn't win the case. They lost the case.
So he was guilty in your view?
I didn't say that.
No, I'm asking you. Okay. You're right. What do you think?
Obviously. Well, I have a wonderful vignette in the book where Bibi Netanyahu, just elected Prime Minister of Israel, calls me into the secret room of the Prime Minister, and he says, "Alan, there's a question I've always wanted to ask you," and I thought it was about Israel's, policies. He said, "Did OJ do it?" And I said, "Mr. Prime Minister, does Israel have nuclear weapons?" And he said, I can't tell you that." And I said, "Aha." So he realized, of course, I can't discuss my own views, but I think the police believed him without a doubt to be guilty, and they planted evidence. And I tell that story and other stories. I'll tell you another marvelous OJ story.
Yeah.
As Marshall Clark was walking past Johnny Cochran was about to make the closing argument. Marshall whispered to Johnny, saying, "I want you to think of one thing when you're up there making the oral argument." And Johnny said, "What?" And Marcia said, "I'm not wearing any underwear."
Oh.
And so I called her the next day. I mean, I didn't believe that story when Johnny Cochran told it to me. And I called her, and she confirmed it. And then I asked her, "So, is it true?" So she said, "What? Were you wearing?" She said, "That I'm never telling you, but it's true that I told him that." So, I have wonderful, wonderful stories because I've been so lucky. I've spent time with Bill Clinton and with Barack Obama and with the Chief Justice of the United States and Woody Allen. I tell stories about Woody Allen, but I also tell serious book about the First Amendment and other amendments of the Constitution.
Well, I want to ask you a question, and you kind of stole it a little bit. I was going to say. Well, first of all, back to OJ 1 second. Am I nuts, or was there a suitcase or something with that Kardashian had? And whatever happened to that? It never got into evidence, or did it?
A lot of things didn't get into evidence. The knife never got into evidence. The knife that the police found in the bureau behind OJ's mirrors. This case was tried so ineptly by the prosecution. I won't say it was like taking candy from a baby, but it was very one-sided.
Maybe she should have stopped worrying about the underwear and started concentrating on the case.
And we didn't have a dream team, as I explained in the book. It was a nightmare team. We didn't get along with each other. There was a lot of battling and a lot of quibbling, and F. Lee Bailey and Bob Shapiro at each other's throats the whole time. And it was a very, very disruptive time, but I don't want to be. I end the book with my obituary, and
I was going to ask you about that. Yes,
with a letter to the editor complaining about my obituary because I don't want to be remembered for my celebrity clients. I want to be remembered for the hundreds of people who didn't have any money who I defended.
Right,
for
pro bono, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And but I also want to ask you, what's the Dersh character?
The Dersh character is the guy you see on television pointing his finger and being obnoxious and always getting the last word. And my son said, that's, not the real me. The real me is pushover Dershowitz, which my family takes advantage of and treats me like a doormat. I never fight back. I never argue with friends or family. I'm the easiest guy to get along with in my personal life and not so easy to get along with in court.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and for good reason, and with much success. All right, so talk about. I was going to ask you about the obituary and the letter to the editor. Explain that. How'd that come about?
Well, I always want to get the last word. Just because I'm dead doesn't mean I can't get the last word. I know I would be dissatisfied with my obituary. It would focus only on my celebrity clients and my defense of Israel. And, I've lived a much broader life than that, and I just want to make sure that my obituary gets it right. And this time, though, at the end of the letter, I promise, finally, this is going to be my last word.
All right, let me ask you this. We just went through this shutdown, and and now everything's been reopened, and we averted a catastrophe. But you talk about Barack Obama. I'm interested in your take. My take is we've just seen that we have a president. And you could turn it around, but this is how I view it. I think the Republicans should present it this way, but I don't think they have the brains to. We have a president who refused to negotiate, which is unprecedented because it's been done by other presidents for the debt ceiling, for keeping the government open, and has shown himself willing to take us over this fiscal cliff into the unknown, into disaster. Basically because he wouldn't take away the medical tax device for a year, or because he wouldn't put himself on the same plan that everybody else is on. No negotiation, my way or the highway. This is who Barack Obama is, and I think it's very dangerous.
Well, that's why you're such a good and powerful advocate for the Republican side. The Democrats, of course, would say it was Ted Cruz.
Yeah, but what would you say? What would you say? I'm interested in what you say.
I would say there's a lot of blame to go around, and I would say that it's unconstitutional for Congress to threaten to close down the government, that the framers of the Constitution, when they wrote Article 1, Section 8, giving Congress the power to raise funds and to pay our debts, had in mind making sure we always remain solvent. That was Hamilton's basic reason for allowing so much power in Congress over revenue. I don't think the framers contemplated either the president or Congress shutting down the government or using these kinds of negotiations. So I think both sides have to go back to the drawing board. In Israel, they recently passed legislation saying you can't shut down the government. If they don't approve a budget automatically, without any law, the following things go into effect: a 10% reduction in this, a 10% with that. It sets out what happens in the case of a deadlock.
Right.
And I think we have to start thinking about that, because I don't think either side should be able to bring us as close to going over the cliff as we can this time.
I got one more for you on this, though. What about, and we have an orthodontist down in Florida who we had on, because he has standing to do it, he's doing it. He hates Obamacare, but he wants the full law implemented as passed. We've heard so much from the president and the Democrats saying it's law, it's stated law, it's fixed law, it was passed, we had 2 elections on it, the Supreme Court upheld it, yet the president, and he hasn't only done this with Obamacare, he picks and chooses. Oh, you get a pass for a year, or you don't have to enforce that right now. Is a president allowed to take laws, whether it's defense of marriage or immigration reform, or not immigration reform, but who to deport, or whether it's the work provision and welfare reform, is he allowed to pick and choose what parts of a law he'll enforce?
Well, remember that this was really started by George W. Bush, who came up with the notion, or others before him, but he really did it frequently, of a partial veto or a conditional signing of the bill, saying I sign it based on the condition that this is the way it's interpreted. I don't think the framers intended that kind of presidential power. But look, I think every one of the framers would be rolling over in their graves if they saw how much power the President of the United States has. They wanted a weak president. They wanted a republic, not a democracy. They didn't even elect the president. He was appointed by electors. They wanted a strong Congress. They wanted a weak Supreme Court, and they wanted a weak presidency. And what they got is a strong Supreme Court, a strong presidency, and a weak Congress. So everything has been flipped. We live in a world where executive power has increased almost all over the world, and parliamentary systems are suffering, and they're moving toward more executive power. So we're seeing a world trend. In my book, I talk a lot about how the Constitution has changed. We've had really 4 constitutions. We've had the body of the Constitution, then we had the Bill of Rights, then we had the Civil War amendments, and then in the 1917 to 20 period, we saw a major revolution in rights when we had immigrants in this country, and we started to enforce the Bill of Rights, which we had never enforced before. So, in my book, I give a kind of biography of the last 50 years of how the Constitution has changed.
And in your book, well, final question, Alan, you talk about, you mentioned your position on Roe v. Wade, which many would find surprising, but the death penalty. I mean, you are against the death penalty.
Well, I was the one who Justice Goldberg asked to write the memo abolishing the death penalty. So my first job as a lawyer was to get the death penalty abolished.
Not a bad job.
Not a bad job for a 21-year-old kid going in to see the justices of the Supreme Court and trying to sell them. So that was certainly my position. It's still my position that I'd like to see the death penalty abolished. And it's happening gradually. And one of the points I make in my book is the Supreme Court is less influential than it's been in the past. When you look at what the Supreme Court has said about obscenity, you can ban obscenity. Turn on your television. It's all over the place. The Supreme Court said you can ban prayer in the schools. Go down south, you'll see prayer in the schools. The Supreme Court, it's of limited influence. The Supreme Court said you can execute almost anybody. Hardly anybody's being executed in the United States today. We're almost coming close to a moratorium on the death penalty. I've never lost a death penalty case in all the years I've been litigating because I use science to win them. And science is becoming so much more important in the courts than ever before. And I kind of tell the secrets of my success in taking the stand. And, it's an interesting read. I hope people will read it. You can also get it on tape. You know who reads it on tape? My daughter.
Really?
She's an actor. And there she is. And she called me and said, Dad, I have to read about your first erotic experience in your book. My God, I can't read that. I said, you're an actor. Read it. And she did a great job.
Some great pictures in there as well. Listen, I always secretly wanted to be a lawyer. I think I would have made a fairly good lawyer.
You would have been a great lawyer.
And if I ever undertook that endeavor, I would have been privileged to have had you as a professor. I disagree with you on many things, but look, I value our friendship.
But the best thing that was said about my book, Larry David said, if he could exchange his life with anybody, it would be me, except for the death threats and the tchotchkes. So, and he gave that as a blurb, right?
There you go. Hey, listen, Alan, really, I value our friendship. Thank you, and great luck with the book.
Thank you.
Take care. That's Taking the Stand, My Life in the Law, by Alan Dershowitz, ladies and gentlemen. Interesting about, I didn't want to press the OJ thing anymore, but you know who I really think did it? If it wasn't OJ, I think the Sun did it. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but that's what I thought back then. I have no proof. I'm not accusing the Sun. But that's what I always felt. First of all, that missing all the bloody clothes, all the bloody evidence was in that Kardashian suitcase. I knew I wasn't nuts, and it just disappeared. Anyway, and look what happened to the Kardashians long after the untimely death of the attorney in question. Okay, we're coming back. You want to weigh in? 877 Newsmax 877-639-7629. I could still read that invisible ink right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.